Thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights, and thank you to Oya for moderating this panel. Clearly, we need to integrate eco-friendly practices into our urban planning, which is required not just for a sustainable future, but also for the well-being of our cities, our communities. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, now, we are beyond honored to have amongst us Dr. Jitendra Singh, Minister of State for Science and Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, please put your hands together and welcome onto this stage the Minister to deliver a very special address.
Thank you, and thank you for having me over here. Viksit Bharat, driven by green growth. So I think before I say anything else, let's not forget that India on its own and the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, has voluntarily gone ahead to declare and to commit that we are going to be net zero by 2070. So I think that itself is a very honorable commitment, and not only that, we also have and we size for ourselves certain milestones, the most significant being the 2030 milestone, where we look forward to having non-fossil fuel energy from as much to the capacity of about 500 gigawatts, which means about half the energy will be from these sources. We also look forward to reducing the carbon dioxide emissions by 1 billion ton and reducing the carbon intensity below 2030, below 45% by 2030. So what I mean to say is that we are already into it, and I think why the question comes up again and again in our discussions is that the mindset is not getting used to it. We still look at ourselves as a nation which is quite, I would not say ignorant, but indifferent. And that's how the West has been looking up to us for many years now. They thought for these more apparently sounding sophisticated subjects like clean energy, green hydrogen, climate change, net zero, all these things were alien to Indians, and we neither had the aptitude not to human to think about all this, because we were beset with our own sources, our own set of problems. But a huge transformation has happened in the last 9 or 10 years after Prime Minister Modi came in. And now we are actually, from a nation which was looking forward to other countries to take a lead or for the leads or for cues, now we are in a position where we are offering leads. And I think it has taken tremendous amount of effort, perseverance, hard work, focused, diligent effort to reach that kind of a pedestal with evidence and with credibility. And the most notable, I think, events that have happened in very recent past, which have established this, is of course, our vaccine story. I don't know how many of us have ever realized that we are a country which was hardly known or spoken very seriously about healthcare, and even not at the government level alone, even at the social level, the cultural level, we were not known to be a nation too much concerned or giving very high priority to even curative health or therapeutic health. So if someone fell sick, he waited for something to happen in the hope that he would get well. So if he or she got well, it was mother's blessing. If he or she didn't get well, it was Pichle Janam ka karma. So both ways, it was quite complacent. So just imagine a country like that, a nation like that, today being known as a leader in preventive health care. So we are the nation which came out with the first DNA vaccine for COVID and gave it and gifted it to the rest of the world. So that has established us in a different kind of an image altogether. And the second, of course, is the Chandrayaan, which all of us have celebrated. For a country which started off its space journey much, much after the then Soviet Union, the Soviet and the USA. And even though the US had already landed one of its human beings on the surface of the moon way back in 1969, but it was our Chandrayaan which went there and picked up the evidence of the presence of water molecules, H2O molecules, not the human being who had a stroll around in 1969. So that again established, and that was an eye-opener for the entire world, including some of the premier agencies. So India has now assumed a different kind of a role, a leading role in many of these newer areas of concern. And actually, we have to now get used to that kind of responsibility that has come upon us. The question is, world is ready to be led. Are we ready to lead? Since the mind is not changing, and now 3 generations later after the colonial rule, I think the sanskar bhi kehte hain, teesri peedhi pe badal jata hai. So that feudal hangover is also over. So we are now coming on our own. So talking about these initiatives, of course, the renewable energy, again, I think one of the very much lesser talked about facts is that India came out with its first solar cell. I'm not sure how many in this room would be able to guess. Way back in 1977, in one of our institutes here at Faridabad, which is incidentally under the control of the Department of Science and Technology, PSU. Also because our priorities were different, our mindset was different, our outlook was different, and I must compliment Anand and the team for having organized an event like this. Well, it wouldn't have been organized in those days. I was telling some of the media person the other day, I said, I bet you dig out the newspapers, because that was it was mostly the print media days, and try to search. You will not find even a single column news, even in the remotest page of a newspaper, reporting the first solar cell having been developed in India 50 years back. Then they laughed and said, how do you say that with so much confidence? I said, no, I can also tell you what will be the news. So they looked back in museum, because I keep doing all this khurafati. So I said the news would be Indira Gandhi dislodged by Morarji Desai. Because that was the year when the Janta government took over. So we even our, our attitude at all levels, because the nation grows as a whole. So we are just a 75 years, 76 years old nation. So we are still evolving socially, culturally, media-wise, communication-wise, trying to be on our own now gradually. Because 75 is a very small span in the age of a nation. I mean, for a mortal being, 70 then starts sounding something inside. But here, 70 years in the life of a nation do not even occupy the footnote of a chapter of history. So now, why I'm saying this, it is India which undertook this International Solar Alliance. So it was a huge initiative. We have not only moved on from solar panels and solar parks, we are now actually offering cues to the rest of the world as well. Now, National Hydrogen Mission was something which was announced by Prime Minister of the ramparts of the Red Fort. Now, Independence Day address of a Prime Minister, whoever be the Prime Minister, whichever be the party, is considered to be a declaration of intent of the government in place. So this was spoken there, and the manner in which we are going, we have already come out with the first ever indigenous hydrogen bus or a hydrogen vehicle. Again, our institute in Pune, the National Chemical Laboratory. Though it was being used over here, but the assembling was happening. The total indigenous is again from one of the CSIR institutes. And if we move the way we are, I think one day we could be also an exporter of the green hydrogen, because for the first time we have started looking at those sources or those avenues or those sectors which were either hitherto unexplored, underexplored, or which were not enjoying our attention or priority. For example, the bioresources lying hugely in the Himalayas. We have at least 3 or 4 states lying in the lap of Himalaya. We never looked there. Today we have the Aroma Mission, we have the Purple Revolution, all those things, and huge biofuels happening over there. The second area is our marine resource. We have longest 7,500 kilometer long coastal area, beginning from Odisha down up to Maharashtra, Gujarat, Kutch. The only country which has an ocean named after India. I was telling the other day, some friends from Australia, I said, you have a country called Australia, you have a continent called Australia, you have an island called Australia, but the ocean, not Australia. Why? Because my ancestors could guess there's a huge amount of wealth underlying there. And that's going to be discovered now. Both living, non-living. We'll have metals, minerals, and huge amount of bioresources there. And that also will be another concern also is now cleaning it of plastic and other things to preserve. So these are some of the resources which are exclusive to India. And for the first time, they have started attracting our attention. And once we are able to explore them to the maximum potential, we will certainly gain an edge. When we say of the next 25 years, the Amrit Kal, so we also must contemplate and try to ask ourselves, where is that value addition going to happen? Similarly, the electric vehicles, I was just now listening, is one of the important answers to reduce the carbon footprint, which we are already into it. The nuclear energy, I think we have targeted for ourselves about 9% of contribution to the clean energy from the nuclear sources by 2040. And that again, a conscious effort has been made by this government. I think in a single cabinet decision, we issued orders for setting up 10 reactors in a single go, which never happened earlier. And also, it's now been allowed to enter into joint ventures, not with the private sector exactly, with the PSUs, maybe later on. But of course, the space has been totally opened up. So we have brought all the stakeholders together so that they can pool in their resources, also be knowledge partners and funding partners. The best example, I think, is the transformation which has happened in the space sector in just about 3 or 4 years. The Aditya launching was watched by about 10,000 spectators. The earlier launching Chandrayaan by at least 1,000 media persons. So immediately, suddenly there was a tweet, what is new, by one of the opponents. And one of the media persons asked me, this is a tweet, what do you have to say? I said, how many times have you come here? He said, first time. I said, that is new. Because we had shut ourselves from all other sources. We were actually living in self-imposed shackles. We have now opened up. So there's a huge synergy between academia, research, startups, industry, and heavily loaded with industry, because it's my considered view that the era of silos is over. And if we have to move forward from here, we cannot move in isolation. So it has to, the larger the integration, the extended the integration. The recycling, upcycling of the bioresources, biofuels, the waste, the circular economy as it is popularly called, is also caught up in a big way. Unfortunately, it doesn't receive the kind of reportage that it should. In Dehradun, we have launched a huge campaign. Every evening, we collect used oil and then convert it into fuel. So earlier on, when our institute in Dehradun started this initiative about a year or so back, they used to procure this used oil from the municipal corporations. So I went there because I'm curious to learn about all these things. So I applied my mind and I suggested to them that don't collect it from the municipal corporation, collect it from the individual households. They said it will be a little cumbersome. It will be cumbersome. It will generate a mass movement, because when you go every day, knock at the door of a housewife and ask her to give used fuel and tell her कि बहन जी इसको नाली में मत फेंकना, मैं आऊँगा 20 रुपए किलो मैं खरीदूंगा. तो 1 दिन 2 दिन 3 दिन के बाद वो पूछेगी किसी पड़ोसी, ये कौन मूर्ख है जो मुझे कहता है नाली में तेल मत फेंकना, मैं 20 रुपए किलो में खरीदूंगा. And उससे जिज्ञासा पैदा होगी. So that's how because if when we talk of synergy, we have to talk of the public engagement as well. And that is how the public engagement happens. And we have actually now realized the benefits of it, the citizen participation, and huge amount of private sector involvement that we look forward to. We've already done that in the most tabooed area of space, and I think we'll have it in large. And of course, without taking long, because I know we have to then engage in a conversation. Very recently, G20, we had this global biofuel alliance when we were talking of this, involving Brazil and USA. Now, we know that all these countries are already into biofuels, also the other countries, but that also gives India a legitimate role as a pioneer in this area, just as we took the initiative in International Solar Alliance, so also here. So that now, from here onwards, if we look forward to have a larger role globally, we have to live up to global parameters. Our challenges have to be global. Our strategies have to be global. We have to learn to beat them in their game. Now, in sports, for example, we were known for kabaddi. all these years. But the world came to know you when you started defeating them in cricket. So you have to learn to play their game and also be up on that. And that's precisely what India has now for the first time started doing in the last 8-9 years. So that's given us tremendous amount of esteem, confidence to scientific fraternity as well as our innovators. And before I conclude, I think what again has not received enough of publicity is very recently what we brought in Parliament, the National Research Foundation legislation called the Anusandhan, which is going to take care of all these issues that I have been speaking about in the last few minutes, is going to be heavily loaded by the non-government sources. For example, out of 50,000 crore of budget for the 5-year term, we'll have as much as nearly 36,000 from the non-government sources. The Executive Council will not only have presence of scientists, but also the non-scientists in the equal measure. I firmly believe science too serious to be left to scientists alone. As Mark Twain once said for economists, economics too serious to be left to economists alone. And we've seen this happening, at least before this government came in. But nevertheless, so we have, and I'm sure this foundation, when it becomes functional, it will not only engage private sector and the other stakeholders in a big way, it will be a better version of some of the other experiments that have happened in the similar manner, because America was among the first to have a foundation like this, which they call National Research Society. But what makes us apart is that in our Executive Council, we also have representation not only of industry, which I said is very heavy, also representation from the society, from the humanities, from social sciences, so that we don't lose out our context, our ethos, and also remain relevant to our socio-economic needs and requirements, while combining the traditional knowledge with the latest cutting-edge technology. So we are going to, in the, I think, times to come, present to the world one of the best models of growth, which is also sustainable, which is also green, which is also likable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And as you see now, Anand has joined him on the stage, because up next we have a very special fireside chat with Dr. Jitendra Prasad, who is the Minister of State for Science and Technology. Let's get it started with the round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Anand.
Well, can I have the mic? Check. Yeah. Dr. Jitendra Singh, thank you very much. Sir, before we start the conversation, can I just pin this on your lapel? This is the green ribbon, and part of the green movement, so as a soldier and as a champion for sustainable and green growth, with your kind permission. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Interesting. Many would wonder, what is the MOSPMO doing on the Green Ribbon Champions? The reason is that the department that comes under him holds the core for technology, or developing the technology that will back the search for clean energy and green energy, and also sustainable options. So you talked about the fact that the green hydrogen bus, we had the Indian Oil chairperson also here at this point. They have promised the rollout of at least 15 buses very soon between Faridabad and Delhi. But you said that the research is happening in Pune, and he had made a mention of it. How much of effort is going to be there from us, when I say us as a nation, towards research and development? What's been the biggest shift, and how much?
I think the two parts, I'll just like to address it in two phases. A, that once we have a stake, then the interest develops. Like, for example, bioeconomy, now we are talking about, the bioeconomy is going to be a hugely lucrative source of livelihood as well in the times to come, and a huge sector of economy. We had just about, in 2014, the India's bioeconomy stood at about just about $10 billion US dollars. Today it is 80 billion. In just 8-9 years, it's gone 8 times. And we look forward to having $150 billion by 2025. So all these resources which had not yet been explored, because you have startups, but how do you sustain them? Because that startup, after all, is also the son or a daughter of the same society. So if he has to sustain, he has to have be driving the same car which his peer is driving, even if he's not a startup. So otherwise he says, what the hell I'm doing over here? So you have to give him the same kind of comfort level in the terms of living, in the terms of his lifestyle. So when they find that here is a stake associated, then the interest generates, the aptitude for innovation also comes, and the whole thing, as I said, the second part is the overall, it all is also gets optimum encouragement if the ecosystem is healthy. And when I talk of ecosystem as a whole, I would also mention a component which may not be part of per se this discussion is the new education policy, which we taught of National Education Policy 2020. And when you ask what will be the role of science, actually just as we were curtailing our resources, our inputs, our supplementation of both knowledge and funds by, living in a veil of secrecy in the space sector, similarly also our education system was producing innovators by default.
Right.
See, for example, in simple terms, we were making our youth, our citizens, prisoners of the aspiration. Your parents want you to be a doctor, so you haven't yet exercised your mind on that. So you take up those subjects, bio, etc. Then after class 12, you don't get it. So what do? You do BSc in the same subject. Then what do? You appear in civil service. If you make it good, if you don't, then what? Then you go in for MSc, same subject. Then after that, what? Then you look for some teaching job in a college, university, because the UGC also pays you well. As I said, you are children of the same society. You can't be different just because you are a startup. So you don't become holier than thou suddenly overnight. Then after MSc, that also you don't. Then what do? Then you do PhD. Then after that, what do? You come to me, become a scientist. See, what a paradoxical thing was happening. It was by default. Now we don't have that. I think one of the greatest revolution that has been brought in by Prime Minister Modi is the National Education Policy 2020. And it's going to have a bearing on every sector of our lives, even our mental well-being. As I said, they will not have citizens or youth who will be living all their life as prisoners of the aspiration which was cultivated by their parents, not even their aspiration. So now we have, after class 12, if you are not able to choose or to get into the stream that you wish to, you can change your subject. You combine economics with medical, biology, like that. And you can, then in the course of time, as the youth grows, he or she also begins to realize his inner aptitudes. Like many of us go to Bombay in the hope that I'm very good looking, I'll become a hero or heroine. There I realize, no, it's not so. I have to end up as a script writer at all. Or if not, some clapper boy. So that exposure and growth as the child grows or the youth grows helps her or him to develop that aptitude or no aptitude, because earlier on he is victim of what his parents had planned. The parents are usually the first corrupting experience after class 10.
Correct.
So I think that whole ecosystem has now changed, as a result of which we will be getting real innovators who will be innovators by aptitude, also by their commitment. And that is going to add value to it, because entire growth hereafter across the world is going to be technology driven.
No, but how much of a lag is it from research to innovation to scale? So that's the lag. Yes. That's where, because you said, let's take the case of solar panels. You said 1977, we had developed the first solar panel. 18 to 20 years ago, a small village beyond Giridih in Jharkhand became totally solar powered because there was no electricity there. But even today, Delhi NCR is not powered by solar panels.
No, I agree with you. And I think the answer to that is precisely what I was saying in the response to the earlier question, because we didn't have that kind of an ecosystem and an integrated approach. That's why I say we have to have a very healthy synergy of academia, research, startups, industry. And industry right from the beginning. They have to be stakeholders right from the beginning. So, for example, if I'm into solar innovation, I have to, even if it requires industry to do its mapping, what kind of solar panels do they require? What kind of solar parks do they require or not? And then we move ahead as a team. Not that I do something, and then as I agree with you, from 1977 till now, we are no takers.
Correct.
Because the others who could use it or even the industry or the other stakeholders were not sensitized enough. That is why National Research Foundation will take care of that. I think it's an opportunity for me to share with you, this learned audience, that in the National Research Foundation will also act as a think tank. It has the mandate of even deciding the themes on which the projects have to be undertaken and funded, depending on the requirement of the futuristic visions, projections. B, also in the terms of international collaborations. So far what was happening is that many of the collaborations happen for diplomatic reasons, not strictly for scientific reasons.
Correct.
So we sign an MOU and we have hundreds of MOUs. So this body will also decide and work upon what kind of collaboration with which country, which help us or help mutually. So we'll have a more scientific approach so that I agree with you, the innovation doesn't get lost in the passage of time. And when it doesn't pick up, then it doesn't move on. So same is what happened with the solar. It came to be known in 77, but it got lost till it was rediscovered, because then we found the constraints of having the other sources of energy not being very healthy with a compatible lifestyle. So we have to have a unified and integrated approach, and rather I would say extended, even for, I was suggesting even to a group of medicos that day, now is the term when you have to integrate the engineering and medical. I've done a very successful experiment, Doctor on Wheels, the telemedicine, in some of the remotest villages in my constituency, and this become a lucrative health startup career. Well, for 60 villages, we had to pay about 50, 70 lakh. Of course, I didn't charge my constituents. It was done out of philanthropy. But the entire exercise was conducted by non-medicos. 3 youngsters, good in IT. They would do the entire screening of the patient. They had tied up with a hospital in Ahmedabad, one in Bengaluru, and then get engaged and provide the prescription. So it's now extended integration. It's not only... In fact, Aditya, if you recall, I mean, we were connected that day. When I was asked to make the official announcement of Aditya having been successfully launched, my first sentence was, the mission, the launching is by ISRO, but the mission is the whole of science. Because so much of contribution has happened from everywhere, and now also from industry.
That's going to be my last question. We've just got about 1 minute on the clock. There are 2 parts to it. How much of this green growth, this push for net zero by 2070, or let's say even by 2050, if there is very aggressive, is dependent on political stability and the political continuum, first part. And the second part is the private corporate India partnership and participation, both factors.
Yeah, to take up the second one first, because that's easier. The point is that we are already into it. And a fanciful term has been called green financing. Not that the notes will be put in will be green colored. The financing will be also neat and clean. So green financing with a larger industrial involvement and industry involvement right from the beginning, because it's my considered view, I firm believe, you cannot move beyond a certain point. Like we had stagnated ourselves in the space sector, and suddenly there's a quantum jump. So it will be heavy involvement of industry, and the National Research Foundation, Anusandhan, will also address that issue. And B, of course, stability is there. It's because of Prime Minister Modi, he's successfully given us a stable political dispensation. The world is looking up to us. And this stability is going to continue, and the evidence of that is that the officers and the other countries continue to relate to us with the same vigor, even in the last few months of the term. Which means they're so confident of this stability being there in place.
Thank you, Dr. Jitendra Singh. We'll take this question further, where we wanted to say that beyond political ideologies, is the growth story, the thought continuum going to be appreciated? Is it going to be bipartisan?
I think just to add to that with your permission, is that there is no option now left. If we have to grow, we have to go collectively, whether we like it or not. Right. I mean, it's just like a bus breaks down, and everybody has to push it hard. The driver says, push it. No, I may not like your face, but I ask you, bhai sahab, thoda sa dhakka laga do. So, our entire growth now is going to be collective.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jitendra Singh, thank you so much, sir. Sir, I'm going to request you to please stay with us on the stage. We have a few awards for our